name is Rachel, and today we're talking January wrap-ups. I've decided in my wrap-ups to include a little reflection on how I'm doing with my goals that I set at the beginning of the year. So that every month I'm kind of reflecting on them and figuring out how well I'm doing, essentially, giving myself a grade. So I'm going to quickly rehash my goals and kind of how I feel like I did in the month of January. Some of these are kind of just subjective to how I feel like I did. Some of these are actually a little bit more measurable, so I will mention all of that as we go. And then of course I'm going to get into the books that I managed to read in the month of January. So my first goal was to post at least one video every week. Typically on Wednesday is when I'm planning to upload all this year, but one video a week is my goal. And despite not having a voice, I managed to do 5 out of 5 videos this month. So check, 100%, crushing it. Go girl. Next up was to use this background. I love my bookshelves, so of course I want to showcase those, but typically I find myself, if I post a video at all, I just use my computer upstairs in my office, and my office is just a mess, and I know it's not that fun to look at, so I just am trying to avoid that particular background this year because I know it's just not great to look at. It's not appealing. And the only reason I use it is because I'm essentially filming from my computer upstairs, which is easier for me because I have any of my data I can just use right off of my computer, and obviously I can edit right there. There's a little bit just less work, essentially. There's no setup, there's no like note taking. Like right now I have my note sheet here that I had to copy down from my data from my computer. Anyway, it's just a little bit more work, and I just want to put that work in this year. And if you'll notice, today I even put on makeup just for you, so you're welcome. But essentially the goal was just to put a little bit more effort into how my videos looked. Not a ton, because you know, this is kind of organic. I don't really like script anything. If it gets to be too much work, I'm just not gonna do it. But I can at least come downstairs and maybe hopefully more of the time include a nice background and at least think a little bit about how it's going to look on film. So that was a huge ramble just to tell you that I didn't do it that well this month. I think this is only the third video that I'm filming all year that I've done down here, but I'm hoping that will improve. Again, I was super sick, so I was just glad I got videos up every Wednesday this month, and a couple of the videos were not conducive to actually having this in the background, so I'm okay with that. Even though we're coming in at about 40% on this one, a solid F, I am okay with it. I think we're on the right track for meeting this goal, so I'm okay with that. The next one is a lot more arbitrary, and that's just my enjoyment of reading this month, and I would say it was about a 65%. I found myself not liking a couple of things, and I did allow myself to sort of DNF one thing, and some other things I just barreled through. So while I would like that to be higher, I'm happier with allowing myself to stop things that I'm not enjoying, even if I feel like I should be reading them. So I would give myself 65-ish% on that. We'll keep working. The next one is the Read Harder Challenge. I want to complete all 24 of the challenges they've issued this year, and I have a big old fat goose egg for this month. I didn't read anything for the Read Harder Challenge at all, so I'm at 0%. Not good, but I'm not going to get down on myself about it. The next one is to read 100 books this year. Again, not fantastic. I only got through 5, so 5%. Goodreads is telling me that I'm 3 books behind, but hopefully in the month of February I can catch up, because February is always my best reading month of the year. And then the last one again is kind of, I have 2 more. Book club. I read 1.5 out of 2 books for my book club. Every month I'm gonna have 2, and technically I only read 1.5 this month, so 75%, and that involves Little Women, which I'll explain in a minute, but I did pretty good. This was one that I did stop reading, and I'm okay with it. So even though I was going for 100% for the year, and I've already ruined that, I'm still okay with it. I think the idea behind doing these book clubs, especially like the student book club, I want to read, I want to be on track with, but I'm already coming up with an issue on that, so I'll explain that eventually. Essentially, it involves like rereading. If I've already read it before, do I have to reread it to count it as a book that I've read for this goal. Does that make sense? Like, technically the one we're reading for next month is Internment. I read Internment last year, so do I have to reread it now to count it as meeting this goal of reading both my books for book club? That's where I'm at with this one. The other one, for the adult book club, like, I'm absolutely going to pick a book and try to read it, but again, how much does my enjoyment of the book outweigh having to read it for this goal? If I'm not liking it and I DNF it, does that count as not meeting this goal? So I'm a little unsure of how I'm going to track this goal, and even if I track it really hard, like, how hard am I going for this goal essentially at this point? But anyway, 75% for book club, not bad. And then the chill out one for general chill outness in January, I'd say it was like maybe like a 60. I didn't join a ton of things. I didn't really push super hard, but I have a lot of things coming up in February. So planning wise for February, I'm probably at like a 25% right now, because I'm joining like all of the things and trying to read like all of the books in February. My TBR stack, just off camera, is just growing every day in February. Oh my goodness. So the chill is drastically going down for next month. So overall, I'm not crushing my goals. I'm not really thriving yet, but hopefully February is where I turn things around. So for the books that I read in the month of January, overall, I would say it was a pretty good reading month. I wish I read more, but overall, I'm happy with what shook out. So first of all, I reread Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. This was our book pick for the student book club. It was a reread for me, and I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars, same as before. It's really good. If you have not read this, you should. It is really good. Basically, I tell everybody it's like The Walking Dead set in like the Civil War, essentially. They're fighting in the Civil War, like historically we know it, and then here comes the alternative history twist. The dead soldiers start coming back as zombies, and so the two sides of the Civil War, the North and the South, have to kind of join forces to put down the dead, essentially. But they find basically another way to put non-white people into slavery. They send them to these schools to teach them how to put down the zombies, and we are following a particular school of black girls who are being trained as attendants so that rich white people can hire them to guard their girls. And I do love this twist. It's not only to keep their white daughters safe from the zombies, which they obviously need to in this world, but also other people, which I think speaks volumes to like how people are to other people. But anyway, these attendants are being trained to protect the virtue of these girls and physically protect them from the zombies. I love that premise. I love the characters in this. I love how it all shakes out. We end up out west and just things go completely sideways, and it really examines like how bad things can be, but also how hopeful things can be. Does that make sense? It's got a lot of both in it, and you're really just so rooting for Jane and Catherine, our two main characters who are from this training school. And I don't know, it ends on a cliffhanger, and I just think this is so interesting. I can't think of other books necessarily like this, which always makes my rating go up, because I think it's just so hard in the world of all of these books out here to come up with something so original. And I just think this book has a lot to say in an entertaining way. I think that it gave us a lot to discuss at our book club, and I just think it's really good. So if you have not read this yet, you need to put it on your TBR right now. It's fantastic. And the sequel just came out, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, so you really need to get on it. Next up is kind of like the bane of my existence this month, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. So here's the deal. I have never been interested in Little Women. I've never watched the movie. I've never read the book. I've never seen any adaptation at all. I just have not cared. It hasn't been on my radar. But there was a scene in the trailer for the new movie where they were dancing around outside because Jo had burned her skirt and she couldn't go inside and dance, that just won my heart. So I decided, I'm doing this. I want to read the book. I want to see this new adaptation, and I'm all in. So I brought it to my peer adult book club and said, hey y'all, do you want to read Little Women together in the month of January? And they're all like, yes. So we read Little Women. However, I started reading it and I was immediately not like super into it. And then I realized that technically it was kind of like two books that we consider Little Women. I bought this one for myself to read, and as you can see, it's a lot shorter than like that beautiful kind of greenish cover one that you see everywhere, the Puffin and Bloom edition. And it's a ton shorter than that. So I thought, why is this edition so much shorter? Well, I did some digging, and it turns out that technically Little Women is just the first part of that book. The second part is actually the sequel called Good Wives. So I told myself, okay, you need to read Little Women, which I did. I completed this book. I have read Little Women, but I technically haven't read Good Wives, which is the second part of what most people in the US consider the entirety of Little Women. And the movies all include Good Wives, which is the sequel. So I told myself I absolutely had to read this, and I did. I read this. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Fine. But I tried to read Good Wives. I didn't care. I ended up seeing the movie, and that just really kind of dovetailed my interest. I just was not interested in reading the second part, so I didn't. So that's where I was talking about. Technically, I only read like half for the book club. I felt a little disappointed in myself that I didn't finish it, but I also thought, you know what? There's other books you want to read. You are not enjoying this. Quit making yourself read something that you're not enjoying. It's okay. I know other people out there love Little Women. If you love Little Women, I am so thrilled for you. But it just wasn't a super awesome reading experience for me. I'm glad I've read this part. I am not super sad that I haven't read the other part. So I just need to be okay with that and move on with my life, which is what I'm going to do. 3 stars, moving on from Little Women. Next up, as a little bit of a palate cleanser, I picked up the newest volume of The Bad Guys. This one's called The Baddest Day Ever. This is by Aaron Blavey. If you follow this channel at all, you know I rave about these. I love it. In this one, they have lost their superpowers, and they're trying to fight evil in the world without their superpowers. And they think that they've lost one of their comrades, and it's just, it's gut-wrenching, and you can feel the emotions because they're struggling. They really get a little existential in this one for a children's book, but I love it. I love the series. I think it's so fun. I will forever buy these and read these. I love Aaron Blavey, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really like this edition and already can't wait for volume number 11. I was worried that maybe it would stop at 10, but from what I've seen, there is going to be an 11, so I'm very, very happy about that. But there you go, Bad Guys. Then I picked up not Dread Nation, but the sequel of Dread Nation. It's called The Deathless Divide, also by Justina Ireland, and I'll put a picture up over this book so you can see, but I feel better holding a book. I was so ecstatic when I was approved for an e-arc of the sequel. Right after I finished the reread of this one, I literally squealed in my creepy voice that I had there for a while in the middle of work when I got it, and I read it super fast. It was amazing. It was 5 out of 5 stars. First 5-star read of the year. I loved it. And when you're watching this video, it will be out. So definitely go pick it up. It comes out February 4th. Fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars. We pick up right where this one leaves off. And I can't really give you too much detail, I feel like, without spoiling things. But I'm just going to tell you that people I considered, like, I guess technically not main characters, really we just follow 2 main characters, Catherine and Jane, but people that I cared about from book 1, like bad things happened to them, and I wasn't ready for that, even though we live in this world, it's a zombie world, like people die all the time. I wasn't ready for it. There is just a gut-wrenching scene right towards the beginning that's gonna take you out. Just telling ya. And the implications of that throughout the story are just literally haunting. And oh my gosh, I'm so here for the sequel. It got dark. It got dark. So if you are a teenager and you read this one, like, be prepared for the darkness of the sequel, because it gets dark. If you're an adult, still be prepared for the darkness that is the sequel. It is so dark and twisty, and it wasn't at all what I was expecting necessarily, but it was so good. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I don't want to spoil it at all for you because It's amazing. You just need to read it. You need to read both of them. From the ending, I feel like it's probably the ending. I think this was supposed to be marketed as a duology, and I would be totally fine with that. I liked the way it ended, but like I said, I don't even know what to say. It is so, so good. And just the links people will go to survive, especially in this world, and what that does to your soul when you have to go to extreme lengths to survive and keep the people that you love alive. Like, what does that do to who you are? And oh my gosh, so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it's out now that you're watching this video. Go get it, read it, and love it. And then the last book that I read in the month of January is Over the Top. This is by Jonathan Van Ness. The reason I decided to pick this up this month is twofold. One, I'm doing an Audible challenge, which I don't think I've mentioned at all, but they're doing a challenge that if you listen to 3 Audible selections that are like 3 hours or longer, then you get a kickback on Amazon. I think it's like $20. So I'm like, I can buy another book. So I decided to do it. The first one I listened to was an R.L. Stine book, and I didn't include it in this because technically it's only an audio, so I feel like I'm not going to count that as a book because there's not a book to go with it. Does that make sense? Some people would argue I'm not going to count it, but I read it and I listened to it. It was fantastic. I think it was called Camp Blood or something like that. It was actually pretty good. It was interesting. And there was 3 authors, very spooky. I loved it. It was fantastic. So this was one I bought when it came out and I hadn't listened to it yet. So I decided this is perfect. My adult peer book club is reading a memoir of our choice for our next book club. So I thought this would be perfect. Kind of short and sweet, but it counts in all the ways. And I've been wanting to get to it anyway, so I picked this one up. And I will say I don't feel comfortable rating this because, I mean, that seems weird, but there were parts that were hard and I didn't want to read through them because it was just difficult. Does that make sense? Not because it was bad, it's because like bad things were happening to Jonathan Van Ness and it made me uncomfortable reading them. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's kind of the point, is to see that his life is not just as amazing as he makes it seem at the moment. He's gone through some things have happened, he's living with these things, do you know what I mean? So I think, my big takeaway is that you don't wake up one day just full of pep and optimism and happy all the time like we might think he does. There are some things, you know, and I think that just helps remind us that everybody's got their own little things. You don't know what other people are going through. You don't know so much, you know, but this was his story, and I am excited to talk about it and hear if anybody else has read this and hear what they think. But again, I don't feel comfortable reading it. I would recommend it, especially if you do like Jonathan Van Ness. And I'm constantly inspired by his, what seems like eternal optimism, and mostly his like self-love. He just seems to really be okay with who he is, and I love that. So I was inspired to read this book based on that. And yeah, I would recommend it if you are so inclined. So there you have it, the 4+1 arc that I read this month, and overall I think I did okay. I'm excited to see what I get done in February, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in another video soon. Bye for now.